So at the Buffalo Trace Distillery in Kentucky, they basically have a rotation going where every day before they open, they announce, hey, today we are putting this bottle of whiskey on sale. And it'll be Eagle Rare or Blanton's or something like that.
Yeah.
Something that's rare, something that's hard to get, something that's fun. And so it's just a while supplies last that day. And they happened to have Blanton's on sale the day we went. So it was one per person. So Victoria and I each got a bottle.
That's
So I had
awesome.
2 bottles of Blanton's. I already drank the first one. This is the second. Ben, what is your drink of choice?
I've got some Hibiki Japanese whiskey.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's one of those treat bottles. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's not like incredibly hard to find. But it's just I think I picked up this one when I got the new job. So it's like one of those that
Nice.
every time like a life thing happens, pick up a bottle and enjoy it.
How much are those around you?
I think they're around like 120.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a good go-to celebration whiskey yet. I have one that is like when I want to have something a little bit more enjoyable, I'll get like Johnny Walker's Green Label. Because since they brought that back, it is my favorite Scotch at $70.
Okay.
It's far away from being my favorite Scotch, but it's in my opinion, Johnny Walker's best product.
Yeah.
Blue Label is garbage by comparison, and more than twice the price in most places. Red Label, Black Label are trash. Gold Label is fine, but I don't think it's interesting enough to really justify being the next step up from Red Label or
Yeah.
whatever. I forget which one's the lowest, red or black.
That's Johnny Walker is one that I've never actually gotten into. I don't know why. It's just been one of those that I've like. I think I had one of like the lower ones, and I've just was like, is
Yeah, in my opinion, black and red are bad Scotch, genuinely.
yeah,
Gold and blue are fine, but I think that they're not remotely interesting. They're incredibly boring in their flavor, but because of it, they're very, very acceptable. Even if you're not a big Scotch drinker, they're totally
sure,
drinkable. But I'm not going to pay $200 for a bottle of drinkable.
yeah,
Green Label is their only product that I genuinely am like, I really enjoy that Scotch. It's very tasty. It's a phenomenal price at, usually I find it somewhere in the 60 to 70 range, but
yeah.
obviously that depends very heavily on taxes on liquor and stuff wherever you
Sure.
are.
It's interesting. I'll have to give that a try. I haven't had many scotches recently. I know I when we was working up in Cleveland, had some friends that enjoyed scotches quite a bit, and I've always been more of a fan of like the whiskeys that have the smoother tastes, and that's actually that got me into tequila as well because tequila also has that like where you get more of the burn and a lot, like the smoother taste and then the burn, and I enjoy that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So that's pushed me away from Scotch into like Japanese whiskeys, and then also
Yep.
tequila stuff like that has a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that smooth taste.
I totally
But
get that.
yeah,
I like for when I'm going for something that is ultra smooth, I like Irish whiskey.
okay,
Irish whiskey is my go-to smooth, but it doesn't get a lot of that burn on the back end. That's where I love my bourbons. That's where I love my
yeah,
ryes. I've only had 2 Japanese whiskeys.
mm-hmm.
Um, Both are by Suntory. I've
Mm-hmm.
had Toki and I've had Hibiki.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Toki was not good. I didn't even really enjoy drinking it.
It's
And I
extremely
thought,
fair.
thank you. And I thought Hibiki was phenomenal and I loved every sip of it.
That's about where I stand with those two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I tried the was it the Toki? Was it the other one? It
Yeah,
was the
Toki's the other one
Hibiki
I
and then
had, the
Toki. Yeah, yeah.
lowest. Yeah.
Yeah, Toki, I've tried it. Like, I've actually bought the bottle like once, I think, because I've had it
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else, and it's just
It's like a 30
there's
$40 bottle. It's nothing special, but
yeah,
like
there is.
if
If I
oh,
can
good.
recommend one, there's
Mm-hmm.
a Nika Grain coffee whiskey. That's another one. That one's a little bit pricier, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so good, and it's like a very rich taste. Like you can, it doesn't taste like coffee, but you can get that like richness from it that
Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
get from
because
a
at the
lot of
end of the
other
day, it's
whiskeys.
just the filtration process and everything for it that's coffee based, right? I think.
I believe so. I don't actually know.
Yeah. So, welcome everyone to our whiskey podcast.
Yes.
um, No, welcome to RGM Hates. This is the podcast where we pick a topic related to tabletop games or D&D specifically or whatever that we generally dislike, talk about why it's bad, why it sucks, and what we could do to improve it. We always have a guest on, and this week our guest is Ben. Say hello, Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben. It's
That's
good to be here.
Ben.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So Ben, I know you haven't been on one of these before. They're much more free form. There's very little structure, hence why we can go off on tangents about whiskey for the first like 5 minutes of the podcast. I believe there was something that we talked about before that we would make our main topic for the day about fifth edition's combat system. What is the overall vibe that you're trying to achieve today? What's the goal you're trying to the point you're trying to make? What's the thesis statement, I suppose?
Okay. I feel like I do have to go into a little bit of a background, like my background of tabletop playing as well, because it's not like I think it has a little bit to do with, my opinion on everything, especially with the combat system. And mainly, I have played mostly just D&D. I've tried a few other games and I've played like a bit of Pathfinder from like 5 or 10 years ago, and then played like recently I've started to branch out to some other ones, but for the most part it's just been D&D. I started with 3.5, didn't play 4th edition, but then went up to 5e whenever it came out and just started, played a ton of 5e. So my tabletop system, like my tabletop role playing experience, has been mostly D&D, and so I was kind of for a long time ingrained in the system of just like D&D is the norm. It's just everything there. Like you could play other games, but they all play similar to D&D. And then as I got more and more into D&D, started looking at other things, started getting more into tabletop gaming, and that led me to realize some of the flaws of D&D. And the one that I think I've latched on to the most has been the combat system, because as as everybody's here seen, because they've all watched the Halloween episode, I very much like the tactics part of fighting, where I play like a tactician. I enjoy strategy and all that, so I really liked in a fight to be able to kind of manipulate the battle and be able to do cool things in there. And it's possible in D&D, but it's not rules. There's no rules to support it. A lot of the things that
Mhm.
you can do in D&D to make combat fun are just you thinking creatively and asking your TM, "Hey, can I?"
Yep.
And that's been part of the like start where I've now started to be like, okay, wait, there are other systems that exist that kind of just allow you to do things more creatively in fights instead of just the action, bonus action, movement kind of and reaction like base of D&D that they use. So
Yeah.
there's yeah.
If I may,
Mhm.
I totally understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're saying. I like to, and this is when I talk about why fifth edition's combat is, in my opinion, pretty dog shit. I like to talk about player to player interaction versus player to system interaction. This is how I personally like to break it down. This is my methodology.
Okay.
And so, player to player interaction is anytime you are interacting directly with another person at the table. Whereas a player to system interaction is any time that you are interacting directly with the mechanics and rules of the game. So, to give an example, if you have a really cool combat encounter in which there's a special fun mechanic, in which there's a gem that you have to get to touch every so many turns, or the enemies become invincible, or whatever, that is actually a player to player interaction because that is a system exclusively set up by your dungeon master for this encounter. Um, it's not something that's written into the rules of Dungeons and Dragons fundamentally. If it were Mechanicin, then I would give it to it. But I can't give that praise to D&D. I have to give that to the DM. And the best way to test in D&D how much you enjoy player to system interaction is take any character you have, any character you like, and set up a basic encounter. One guy around the proper challenge they should be with melee in front of you, and one guy, let's say a little bit higher up on a stairway behind them that has ranged stuff. Go through that encounter with no DM, nothing to describe the cool actions you're doing and all that jazz, just rules as written. Go through it, then reset and go through it again. And see how different that second one was, how many more opportunities you had, how much things changed. Because spoiler alert, with most classes and most characters, unless you're choosing to do different things for the sake of doing different things and playing objectively worse just for the sake of variety,
Yeah.
not much is going to change.
Yep.
Yeah. So that is your like it's not a perfect test, but a decent like little mini litmus test to see if your player system interactions for your combat based game, which D&D is, are fun. And in 5th
Yeah.
edition D&D, they're not. You can only go through that one combat so many ways, and depending upon your class, one way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an extremely good test actually for it, because it makes it so that you have it allows you to show the creativity that you and your DM actually put into like the effort into it to make the fights interesting and fun. If you do find them interesting and fun in the games, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably because of that, not because of the actual system itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. That's a good thing to do. I I have one other like weird pet peeve that I have with it that's like an easy one, but just another one that is annoying, where it's the weapon system as well. I don't want to make every dex based fighter have a rapier, but it's just not efficient to have them have any other weapon. Like it's like that if you want to make a melee, like they're gonna have a rapier. Why? Like you could just
Ben,
flavor it as whatever, but it's just dumb.
Ben, what are
Why do
you
they do different
talking about?
damage?
There are 2 entire ways to play melee. You can play rapier or great axe.
Well, yeah,
They're both incredibly viable builds.
that's the thing. It's just like it's crazy that they. I'm surprised because I haven't. To be fair, I haven't looked into a lot of the stuff for the new D&D 2024 edition. But I've talked with you actually. I think a little bit about this
Mhm.
before, and I don't think they had changed that. So like the weapons still have different dice to deal damage, which doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me. Yeah, you should just have a
So
base.
they technically changed it.
Okay.
The change that they have in the new system in 2024, in 5.5, if you will, is they have basically a weapon modifier. So that if you have proficiency or expertise or whatever the fuck it's called, with that specific weapon, you get an extra effect. So, like, great swords have rend or something. I don't remember what any of it's
Yeah, like
called.
cleave.
Yeah. So it's a special one that is you do damage even if you miss.
Okay.
And great hammers can knock people down or something, and clubs can push people or whatever.
Sure.
Each one it's the thing, but then it has an extra effect.
Mhm.
The problem with how it's done is that the effects are generally all pretty equal in their strength, and you only get proficiency with so many. Even if you're the fighter that gets the max number of your weapon proficiencies or weapon expertises or whatever it's called, I think you get like 4. So 2 range, 2 melee, or 4 melee if you want. And it doesn't trigger under certain circumstances, or it doesn't trigger a certain number of times a day. It just triggers always.
Okay.
It is just you always have the modifier on your hits forever, always, no matter what. And it's like there's no tactical decision actually added in.
Yeah.
There's no real incentive to swap weapons or be a one-man arsenal or all of that, because it's just, man, it really feels bad when I miss attacks. So I'm just going to pick the weapon that always does damage even when I miss.
Yeah. It's like they're trying to balance it for like early and late game, but they just balance it for early game because they don't want to make it feel busted, and then late game it just doesn't matter anymore. Which
Yep,
you'd think
absolutely.
like it's a weapon proficiency. Like you think that
Yeah,
the better you get with it, the more, dare I say, proficient you get with it, the better you would be, the
absurd.
better it would be. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think this is one of the things that I brought up in one of the previous RGM hates about reviewing 5.5. I think that the system has improved a little bit. And this is, I think, what we'll do, since the premise of today's episode is so incredibly basic that in the first 10 minutes, we've already kind of said what it is. I
Sure.
think we're going to spend this episode talking about less complicated, less intensive, all the way up to like entirely different systems of ways to fix some of the issues with combat. So I'm going to start with the simplest one I have. If you're playing 2024 and want to actually encourage people to use different weapons and have weapons that they swap out and all that, increase the number of weapon masteries. Weapon mastery, that's what it's called. Increase the number of weapon masteries everyone gets by 2.
Sure.
So if you're a fighter, you get 6. This encourages you to have 3 different melee weapons that you swap between on whatever is more convenient. Do I need to be able to push someone back right now? Do I need to be able to stun someone, put disadvantage on them, whatever? Swap your melee weapons. There's a choice there now. Even when you're playing your classes that normally get 1 or 2, now you have 4. So now you have a reason to have, hey, I'm a rogue. I have a dagger on me and a rapier and whatever. There's now a choice to be made when you're going into combat. It's not huge. It doesn't fix all the issues with it, but there's something there now.
I've got something with that. Do they change the rule at all for equipping a weapon, or is that because in 5e, I'm pretty sure it's like you can free action equip, but if you want to unequip it, it's a bonus action or something for it. It's like 1 free action for each.
As far as I'm aware, that's still the case.
Okay, because that's something that where like if you're a fighter, why would like that would be also tough. Where if you're playing a fighter and they actually give you bonuses, you're like, yeah, you're supposed to carry multiple weapons and use them. So be able to swap them out instantly. That would also make
don't penalize me for that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree wholeheartedly. Weapon swapping should be a free action in that scenario. Maybe it's a bonus action if it's an attuned item or whatever. Something to give a reason for that. If you want to make those special in any certain way, fine. But no, there should be no reason that it's like, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to switch from my greatsword to my crossbow. Okay, well, loading your crossbow is a bonus action.
Yeah.
And equipping the crossbow is a bonus action.
Yep.
So, no.
No, have fun. 2 turns later, you got it, bud.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree totally. So, any particular homebrew things or other systems or whatever that you like as far as what fixes combat?
So I've been playing with another group that I've been playing with we're testing something out for it's an Elder Scrolls RPG that's still in beta, I think, but it's they use a D100 system for everything, so it is different, wholeheartedly from D&D and the way you roll for everything there. But the important part for me that I like about it is in the combat system, you have like a action point system where everybody just starts out with 3 actions, and they start at the top of the turn order, and you can use them whenever throughout the turn. So you have certain actions that you can do that are reactions or actions. So only some of them you can do on your turn, some of them you can only do on not your turn. But having the option to have all 3 of those, it allows you to never also like waste anything. Because how many characters just go through and never use their reaction in D&D? Like they just don't need to, so it's just wasted. And that even happens sometimes for bonus actions or actions whenever it like doesn't make sense, and it feels so bad when you waste something like that because the resources are so finite. You only have you have 3. You have action, bonus action, and reaction.
Especially with how slow 5th edition combat can run, in which like sometimes with especially newer groups and things where you're dealing with, oh hey, well, your turn's over. It'll be about 15 minutes before your next turn. And so to take that one turn you get in that 15-minute span and go, well, I'm not within range to hit anyone, so I guess I'll just move and pass.
Yep.
It's terrible.
Yeah. It feels bad a lot. And that's why I enjoy this system. One other thing that was interesting to me is I've played a ranger like once or twice, played a ranged fighter even, specifically the arcane archer fighter in D&D, and it just became kind of not fun really quick because it was just like you have like a few trick arrows and then you just like fire it and then move on and go. This one has something very small in the system that they added that made playing a ranger really fun, because you would be able to take your action to shoot, and you can only take an attack action twice. So you have 3 actions, only 2 of those can be an attack. So you can like hold those actions to use at the end of the turn order, and one of the actions you can use that's not on your turn is to aim. So at the end of your turn, if somebody didn't attack you or anything like that, you didn't waste the 1 or 2 actions you have left over. You just use that to then aim and add a chance to hit to your next turn. So it's makes you're getting use out of everything. If you're actually positioning yourself well and like far away from combat, you get benefits from it, right? Like you can use that
Mhm.
reaction that would normally be wasted in a system like D&D's and be able to just utilize it every single turn to just aim and get a better shot.
I like that. I like that a lot, a lot. Um, I have two things. One that is a pretty significant overhaul that still stays within fifth edition, and another one that is talking about a wildly different game system. So I'm going to start with the one that is more of just an overhaul, and then I'll get to the wildly different game system altogether.
Okay.
So, in looking into what makes combat and things fun in a lot of games, I found one of the big things, and this impacts. I'm a Warhammer player. I love Warhammer 40,000 with all my heart. And I found that one of the big things that causes a lot of Warhammer games to be so boring, especially when you're with newer players, is the amount of downtime, the amount of time you spend doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so, one of the ways that I've seen a lot of games fix that, I've seen Warhammer try to fix that over multiple editions, and I've seen other games compensate for it. Age of Sigmar and things like that work around it as well. Is if you have things to do, and other board games, honestly,
Sure.
not just Warhammer, but other things too.
Yeah.
Um, anytime you are encouraged to interact on someone else's turn, not in a way that fucks them up, but in a way that just goes, oh, that's a cool thing you're doing, let me help. Or, oh, that's a cool thing you're doing, it triggers this for me.
Yeah.
Because it makes it so that on one end, not only are you interacting with the game more, in a way that since it's effectively in response to something, it's not really slowing things down.
Yeah.
It also means that you're paying attention the whole time because you're watching for those triggers. We've all seen those people who, as soon as their turn is over, phone in hand, face down, not paying attention to anything else going on.
Yep.
Give them an incentive to pay attention. So, this gets me to my broader idea. I don't have this system written up yet. I don't. But I think that the best way to go about fixing this without changing, with changing as little as possible, is implement an entire slew, pages, 3, 4 pages of things that different classes, different backgrounds, different feats, whatever, can do on reaction. Give everyone like 10 different reactions they can do and give people more reactions. Just with like the caveat that you can't do the same reaction more than once. You can't hellish rebuke 5 different attacks in one round. Um yeah, some things
Seems a
might
little
end up a
busted.
little unbalanced, but
Yeah.
um at the end of the day it's D&D. A bunch of shit's already broken anyway. So if
Yeah.
multiple reactions but you can't do you can't do each of them more than once, makes
Yeah.
a couple things a little too strong, that's fine. If you had an issue with that, you'd remove Fireball from the game. And no one does that. So
Or just the wizard class in general.
yes, you'd remove the wizard class from the game.
Yeah.
Um so that would be my honest recommendation, is give people
Yeah.
an aim reaction. Give people a defend reaction where they can jump in to help an ally, or an aid reaction where like make flanking a reaction, right?
Yeah.
Um distract reaction, whatever. Like someone's
Yeah.
trying to do a check and you don't want someone to interfere with it and you're within a certain range, you can distract reaction to give -2 to the enemy's roll, whatever.
Yeah.
Give and have a ton of it dependent upon class and stuff, so people have different reactions. There's some that are for everyone and some that specific people get. And this way you're getting these little minor bonuses here and there that are helping you, helping your allies, impeding your enemies,
Yep.
that make it so that you're always paying attention for when that cool moment comes up. I think that
Yep.
helps it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and it's I know you are a at least a former Magic player as well, and you understand the difference of when you're playing a blue deck and you've got that island untapped there, and you're just sitting there. It's not only is it you're paying attention to the board more, but everybody else is paying attention to you more too because they're
Mm-hmm.
worried about that counter spell. So just being able to interact with games when it's not your turn, it changes how it feels. Like, when people are playing Magic, if they're not playing blue, their head's in their phone because they can't do anything a lot of times on other people's turn. And that's not exclusive because there's other instances that people can do. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's just to keep it simple. It's just when you have that counterspell mana up, you're looking for something and you're always paying attention, which is more fun for a lot of people. Some people don't enjoy that
absolutely.
stuff, but yeah, just being involved more with the game is normally more fun.
I've not really met anyone who doesn't enjoy playing that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people who don't enjoy playing against that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that's fair. That's fair.
um, but yeah, no, that's exactly the idea. Is just give people all of those counter spells. Give
Yeah.
people all of those ways to do things because someone else did something. Um, do you have any ideas that you want to hit before I get into my next one?
I don't think so. I mean, going that system that I played was like we played it for maybe 5 sessions or so, and I was really enjoying it because of the like multiple things. But I guess one other part of that system that I didn't mention before was they do have it's a classless system for the most part, and you kind of just build your class by like getting basically feats together that are just more
Mm-hmm.
powerful feats to then let you do what you want, which allows you, and most of them have to do with combat, so you're able
Yeah.
to kind of like build a combat class that allows you to fight in the way you want to, which is not necessary for D&D or for like all tabletop RPGs, but it is nice to actually be like, it's like playing any like MOBAs or anything like that. Like you're playing a character and your character is restricted, but you're getting these other things that allow you to make it your own, like the items that you buy in League of Legends, like they allow you
Mm-hmm.
to make that character different from the way other people are playing it. And that's a very cool thing to have, and D&D doesn't really have enough like customization in that, in my opinion. And that's, I know 5e was originally, it originally came out to be a simple form of like tabletop RPGs, one that was
Yeah.
accessible to everyone. But it definitely, I was hoping that with the next iteration it would get more complex because now they
That
got
this would be the
everybody.
3.5 to it, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah,
No,
that's what
it's
I was
just
hoping
ah
for.
man. That's what I wanted as well, and I'm so
Yeah.
disappointed that it's not that. I'm so disappointed that it just ended up being 5e plus patch fixes.
Yeah. Yep.
um yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, I'm ready for this ride where you're gonna go on a
All right.
wild Mr. Bones wild ride of your new system for combat.
So, the game that I think, if you really wanted to revamp combat and play interesting combat that is more fun, that makes it so that even when you don't do something, you're doing something, I think what we need to do is we need to look to Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team.
Okay. I have played some 40K, but I have not actually played any Kill Team.
So, Kill Team has a really, really interesting mechanic. For those who aren't familiar, Warhammer 40,000, if you've heard of it, is a good old war game that is you have your army against an opponent's army. It's for a lot of the full size and larger games, like 60 to 100 models, depending upon the army you're playing, against your opponent's 60 to 100 models, right? There's a lot going on the board. Kill Team says, okay, if that's what a full army battle looks like, what does a Spec Ops unit infiltrating something look like? And you have one unit on the low end, 6 dudes, on the high end, like 12. There's one faction that goes up to 14. And that's the most models you ever get in Kill Team. So, this, in order to make that seem fun and interesting, makes every model individually controllable, makes it so that every model has a role, has a thing that they can do, a thing they're good at, and has alternating activations like most more RPG based tabletop games, in which it's I move one model, I do all of one model's actions, then my opponent does all of one model's actions. So we're already in the realm where we're dealing with something that feels closer to a TTRPG. The interesting thing is, you have two different categories of order that you can give your troop: an engage order or a conceal order. All of the actions you can do on both are the same, except you cannot charge into melee combat on a conceal order, and you cannot shoot at anyone on a conceal order. The trade-off is, as long as you have cover while concealed, no one can charge or shoot at you either. This immediately creates a scenario in which just moving into position feels tactical instead of bad.
Yeah.
Because you're moving in somewhere and going, yep, they're just moving in and interacting with a thing on the ground or holding an objective or whatever. But because they're moving in concealed, it is now an intelligent decision as far as walking. Whereas in D&D, it's normally walking is the way to get from here to the enemy. And that's it.
Yeah.
So then with your engage action, of course, you have all of your action combat, you have all your shooting, your melee, all of that jazz. And so the unfortunate thing is this heavily relies on terrain and your map layout being interesting and fun. Sure. If your map layout is just a big open field with nothing going on, this doesn't really help because you will never have cover in your conceal action.
Yeah.
But this causes cool things like there is a light barricade. It's a movable barricade that you can use, and it's just a universal equipment. And you can pick it up and carry it with you. It significantly impedes your movement.
Sure.
But it counts as cover always.
Yeah.
So you can just march up concealed behind your shield as you're moving it up with you. And then as soon as you need to pop out and start shooting, but because you're so much slower, people can flank you so that you aren't getting cover from it anymore.
Yeah.
It's great. It's so great. And so implementing something like that where you have, okay, here's your stealthed option. It impedes you these ways, but it means that now just moving around stealthed is interesting and fun and sets things up. But of course, this does require you to revamp literally the entire combat system. You're playing a different game at this point, not D&D anymore.
Yeah, it'd be pretty big to change that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Play
Kill Team. Go play Kill Team. That's my recommendation.
Yeah. There you go, guys. Stop playing D&D. Just play Kill Team.
Yep.
No, but I like that, and it's really cool when, like, my mind when you're talking about it, it's immediately going to, like, what can you do, like, you know, what kind of strategies can you come up with to make this, like, effective, like more effective? Not the movable barrier is also a fine thing, and I'm sure you'll have like spells that can do that too, and other things that can be maybe even you can even have like a wizard reaction that like makes a barrier for somebody, kind of like the shield spell, but
yeah,
somebody
absolutely.
else there, But
imagine like you're a rogue. Once per day, you can, as a reaction, swap to a conceal order. Yeah, so that way you're attacking from combat, but you can just go, okay, this is my once per day. My cover isn't just cover anymore. I'm hidden again.
Yeah, it'd be cool. And it also allows you to kind of like set up traps, right? Like you're not just, the tank isn't just going into tank. The tank has to go in and like sometimes we'll tactically need to retreat. And then you can have the other people that were being concealed now can actually pop out and attack. So it's a lot of like small tactical changes are just affected, like are now able to happen because of that. So that is really cool.
One of my favorite, it's the simplest mechanic in the world, but it's one that just goes, hey, you want to know what your mind should start playing around with? Here's your jumping off point. A sniper rifle. It has a special, you can shoot it normally during your engage orders, just always. But there is a special thing you can do in which if you do not move, you can shoot it while concealed.
Yeah.
And immediately it's like, oh, that's how you can start playing around with how classes work on a fundamental level in which they interact with engage orders and concealed orders in this really fun and interesting way.
I mean, there's even things like that that you could play with if you wanted to actually adjust. Like, this is a starting to get into dangerous stuff and getting over complex, maybe. But like, if you mess with movement speed and other things like that, you could even have how much, how far somebody moves affect how easy the shot is to take, right? Like,
Yep.
there's other things like that that you can throw into these systems that take your, it makes the options you're making now are a lot more complex, but that to me just makes it more fun because it a lot of times will make
Absolutely.
the option easier too. Like if
Mhm.
you have a target that's moving, you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to shoot that guy because he's a monk moving at 100 miles per hour. I can't touch that. I'm just going to
Yep.
shoot this stationary guy instead. So there's
Yep.
like, it really just makes the game feel like your decisions kind of matter a lot more. Like imagine if you have to take the shot at the monk to be able to like take him out before he gets to a certain point. That shot now feels so much more critical and important than just a normal,
Hmm.
oh, I'm just going to try to hit an enemy and then nope, it didn't hit.
And then
Cool.
setting up your wizard
Okay.
or cleric's like buff to a hit or something while
Yeah.
they're concealed next to you becomes immediately infinitely more important because
Yeah.
you're like, okay, we really need to make sure that we get this right. Because if I don't pick that dude off as he's going cover to cover, we're fucked. And
Yep.
like that's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. I don't 100% agree. I love that. Just those little things add so much more to the combat. And I
Mhm.
understand that not everybody loves super complex combat,
No,
but I
yeah.
think that there's definitely a balance where you can make it interesting and allow for more complex stuff without making it that
Mhm.
it's required to have the more complexities in it to
Yeah.
make those decisions.
I think a system that gets it better than D&D without changing too much is Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm. The new
I think
Pathfinder?
New Pathfinder is great. I love New
Okay.
Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Pathfinder in general, but New
Okay.
Pathfinder's phenomenal. Um, it has small systems like flanking and actual buff and support abilities that make it so that playing around what your teammates are doing is important.
Yeah.
It's not anything significant like my oops all reactions or three
Yeah.
free actions throughout the turn or anything like that. It's much more in line with exactly what you're used to if you've played a lot of 5e, but giving you just a little bit more so that you have to think about it. Um it's Pathfinder in general is Pathfinder is very similar to 3.5.
Yep.
Pathfinder A uses a 3 action system. So you have your 3 action points and you
Mm-hmm.
use those as you need. Some things take all 3, some things take 2, some things take 1. There are still free actions, of course. Um, but it also creates this scenario in which you are playing around your allies because you can't really fuck up in 5th edition. Like,
Yeah.
you're not really capable of making a choice so bad that it ruins your character. You can't play a you can play an unoptimal character for sure,
Sure.
but at the
Yep.
end of the day, my all strength no charisma bard is still bizarrely playable.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing is Pathfinder lets you make more mistakes.
Yes.
Pathfinder says, "Hey man, here's how the game works. You get a lot of freedom, but that freedom comes at the cost of you can screw up."
Yep.
So I don't know if I would recommend Pathfinder to brand new players to tabletop role playing games.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you've played a good amount of fifth edition, you're like, man, what would it be like if I had to actually think about my character in order to make them playable?
Yeah.
Um, jump into Pathfinder. It's a really really good time.
Okay. I'm gonna have to give that a try. I haven't actually played the new Pathfinder yet, but I've heard from multiple. You're the second person I've heard from that has said that it's very, very good. So
Oh, phenomenal.
yeah. But that's one thing I remember from playing old Pathfinder, which I don't remember what edition I was playing at the time, but it
Mhm.
was like the what is it called? Like the bonuses you get to all your rolls are like extreme compared to D&D. So in D&D you'll
Oh
have
yeah.
like, +2, +3, maybe up to like an 8 or something like that. Level 1 in Pathfinder, everybody's got 8s to their pluses. The thing is that changes the threshold now. So like if you're trying to pass a check, if you don't have any bonuses in that, you're not passing that check. Like you're just not going to. You now actually have to like be trained in something to do something, which
Yeah,
is at the
absolutely.
yeah, at the time I think I when I was new to RPGs, I didn't enjoy it as much, but now that I've played them a lot more, I'm definitely much more in the yeah, let me find that creative challenge and like throughout everything to actually be able to get this like to accomplish these things. It's more of a fun challenge now than it was
Hmm.
before.
That's one of the things that always irked me super bad about fifth edition is like you get your scrawny wizard who like has never lifted anything heavier than a book in their life, and you get the barbarian who lifts mountains for fun, and it's like, I want to break down the door, and the barbarian rolls a 2, and they're like, it's a total of 10. And then it's like the wizard tries, and they roll a 19, and it's like, well, the DC was 15, so wizard, you break it down with ease. And
Have you
it's
ever
like, why?
have you ever seen a movie called The Gamers?
I have not.
Man, I very much recommend it. I recommend that to everybody I know that has played D&D because it is the funniest. It's on YouTube. It's literally just called The Gamers. There's a moment in that because it's the entire movie is just like it's like a student film, and they're just
Mhm.
making fun of like D&D tropes throughout it as they're like playing D&D and then playing as their characters as the actors are. And one of them is that exact moment. They have like their barbarian tries to open the door and he can't get it, and then you have the wizard who just rolls like a nat 20 and just rips the door off of his thing and then just does the Tuscan Raider like it's
Oh
so funny.
man,
Yeah,
I
I
love
absolutely
that.
recommend that movie. It's every single like scene in it. It's like a Monty Python movie where every scene is just a different reference to something funny in D&D.
That's awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Oh man. So let me call out
Yes.
2 games that really really fix some of the things that we're complaining about.
Okay.
Because I think that power scaling is an issue of 5th edition. It's not an issue necessarily, but it's definitely not to my liking.
Sure.
The idea that you can, right, there are high level, like 15 level 15 equivalent enemies in Pathfinder that you literally cannot hit at like second level.
Hmm.
You just can't beat their DC. You never will. There's no roll you have that hits it. And I think that feeling of progression is awesome. Um, but there are 2 systems that I'd love to call out that do some really really cool things. One is combat related, so we'll try to circle back with that. The other
Okay.
one is role related. Call of Cthulhu. Have you ever played?
I have not.
I have not had the pleasure of playing either
Okay.
because I've not had the time or people to play it with. But it has a system there within it. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that basically once your skill in an ability is a certain point, once you are proficient enough in an ability, when the difficulty of doing one of those checks is low enough, you no longer have to roll.
Yeah.
When your investigation is high enough, you've reached a certain proficiency in it, and you come to something that needs investigated, and the DC is like a mid-level lower one. Your game master will just tell you, no, you know how to do it. There's no point in which you're going to forget how to look at things. If you're
Hmm.
really good at picking locks, you're not just going to sit there and look at the simplest fucking lock that an idiot could figure out and go, well, how does this work? Like, you know how to do it. You
Yeah.
just do it. That's why I'm actually a huge advocate of allowing the rule in Dungeons and Dragons in general of taking 10. For those who aren't
Okay.
familiar, the idea of taking 10 is if you have enough time to work with something, but failure will still cause a problem, you can say to the dungeon master, I'd like to take 10. And it means that instead of rolling a dice, you will just play as though you rolled a 10. This way you can still fail, but if you're getting a +7, +8 to your roll, you're just getting an 18 for free. The way this is usually implemented is if you are not under a time constraint, but failure is still an issue, you can take 10. This is a homebrew rule that I love. I love it very, very much. I think it is really good to give people the option to, because it avoids that issue of someone with a +10 to their roll failing a DC 15. because they just rolled a 2. I know that's how the game works. That's how the game is built. I think it feels like shit, and it shouldn't. So there you go. There's my take 10. And the reason that you can't take 10 on things that do have a really, really ridiculous time constraint on them is because even if you're amazing at something, when you're pressured to do it fast, you can still fuck up.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's fair. There's even like, there's some stuff to be said to like with passive wisdom and passive passive perception and passive investigation as well. I actually think it's like criminal that they don't have passive investigation on the character sheets like base, because it's like those kinds of things really just like if you have a character that has high intelligence, like they're just going to be able to figure stuff out faster than others. And if you have a character that's really, got good perception, they're going to see things before they happen. So like it's not before they happen, but you know what I mean? So
Yeah, I know what you mean.
As it goes through, yeah, those checks kind of should take more of a precedence in D&D, and maybe that's a DM thing too, where it's just DMs aren't really like shown that, but I just think it should be talked about more as like, hey, look,
Absolutely.
you have these skills in there, use them.
I mean, the passive system is your passive score is equal to 10 plus your modifier. It's literally taking 10.
Yeah.
It's just you're taking 10 by default.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, just as a note to DMs out there, if you do implement taking 10, feel free to, if you want to simplify your game, make it so that people can feel accomplished, implement taking 20 as well. Taking 20 is if you are not in a rush and there is no downside to failing. That way, people can sit there, fiddle with it, and if they fuck up, they can just keep fiddling with it, right? Like, think of a lock pick. You're picking a lock, and you fuck up, and you drop the tumblers, and you go, oh no, what do I do? But, like, the person's not going to be home for literal hours. You can just keep working on it. This way, it's like, oh, the DC is 25. Well, anyone with under a +5 can just never do it. But if you have a +8 to it, yeah, if you're given literally all night, you'll get it eventually.
That's totally fair. I was actually kind of questioning it at first when you brought it up, because I was like, with there's being no like crit successes and all that in like the, skill checks really, or there's not supposed to be. Yeah, I was kind of wondering what the effect would be, but I mean, yeah, it makes sense. If you just have it, like if you have those really hard skill checks, you can still get around them by it's a reward for the players for doing something smart. Like, what if they created a situation that was going to make the person not be home for hours? That's should be their reward to get in that chest. If they just can't break open the chest, that would suck.
Could you imagine taking an entire session to stage things the perfect way that someone is out of their house? And then the DM goes, oh, you rolled a 7 on your lockpick check? It's bust. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It also eliminates the player question of asking, can I try again?
Yeah.
Right.
Which is always, it's just like, it's annoying to go through, because it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to just try a million times and the roll doesn't actually matter then? Or like, what's, I don't know.
Yeah. That's one of the big things is it's like, I want to move the boulder. Unfortunately, you failed your strength check. You can't move the boulder. It's like, okay, what happens now? Well, there's still just a boulder in the way. Nothing in the world has changed. It's like, okay, well then can I move the boulder again? And you are in the situation where you either have to say, sure, let's keep rolling till you succeed. Or you have to say, no, you can't try again.
Yeah.
Because shut up. That's why.
Yeah. So no, sorry, you already tried. Same result each time. Yeah, you rolled a 1. That's how you're gonna roll every time.
You place your hands on it and go, man, it was really embarrassing that I fucked up last time. I'm gonna give up.
The inner thoughts just get to you, and you just go to put your hand on it. Just, I can't. Nope, not again.
Sorry, guys, did what I could do. And so, like, taking 20 fixes that. It is because it creates the scenario in which no one ever has to ask, can I try again? Because at the end of the day, if they can't do it with a 20, it's because they can't do it. Not because they fucked up this time. So there you go. Take 10 and take 20. Implement them both in your games because I think they're good.
Yeah, full-heartedly agree. It's there's definitely D&D is a good system, which is why we play it and why it's gotten so many people around the world to be able to play it. It is definitively. I don't think we can actually argue. I mean, maybe we want to argue with it. This is called our GM hates, but I think it definitively is a good system. It's just once you've played it for over 10 years, it gets to that point where you're just like, I wanted some new things. I want more challenges in it, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's definitely a thing. I'm glad we got to talk through like some combat stuff, and I hope they do implement more just like creativity to combats because it in most campaigns it is a majority of the game that you play is in combat. Like there's
Hmm.
some that you play where you're going around, you're just puzzle solving a lot as well, but the easiest thing to set up is a combat. There's so many resources for it and everything is just so easy to do. So a lot of campaigns use it a lot. And if you're just running a basic combat, like if the DM's not doing a lot to make it a more creative, like fun feel, then it just doesn't feel good. And I feel like that should be in the system. There should be built-in tools to be able to allow you to make those combats way more interesting and fun. You shouldn't have to work that hard to make the combat enjoyable.
Yep, I agree. I agree 100%. All right, so we're approaching the 52-minute mark, or just past it. So I will say, as we begin closing up for the day, Ben,
Mhm.
what is a system that you've played that you love the combat of? You think the combat itself is just incredibly fun, incredibly smooth, incredibly good. We've talked about the ways that you can kind of work with and revamp 5th edition system to be better. If you wanted to just play a different system altogether, what would you recommend?
Let me pull this one up because I don't remember the name of it because it's an abbreviation. Uh, the UES RPG, third edition. I believe it's still being tested right now. This is version 4, but this is uh, the Elder Scrolls system that I was talking about before. They've got a Discord that our I wasn't the DM of the group that was playing it, but our DM was in their Discord and talking to them constantly. He was providing feedback to them, talking back. They're a great community around the game to actually like, to give advice and talk about it, and they're still changing it constantly. So it's not solidified, so they're open to feedback, which is nice as well in systems when they can, if you're playtesting it for them, they will take your notes into consideration. And but the combat system itself, just having it be where you're able to actually make like your custom class to get everything going, and you're able to then use your actions whenever you're not wasting your actions throughout the turn because there's almost always something you can do. It just makes it feel so much better. Positioning feels more important. Actually, like you know how you're fighting the enemies. There's a lot of moves that you can make that just help your allies as well. So if you want to, you can build a class that's around actually just like you know buffing up your members or like making their next attack good and whatever. And you don't have to like decide before a fight when to give somebody stuff. And it's just a very liberal system with how you're able to act in combat, which allows for a lot of creative freedom. And I've noticed myself spending a lot more time just digging through the rules to actually like find out the stuff that I can do, which is more fun than just asking your DM every single combat is this possible? Because it's just up to them. And like some, even if they say yes all the time, sometimes that's still not fun because you might be asking too much. Like you kind of feel sometimes like you're asking for too much and then it's making it too easy because you're being a little creative with it. But it's just allows you to utilize the rules to make the combat more fun, which I enjoy.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. I love that. There you go. That is the UES RPG. I'm assuming that stands for Unreal, or sorry, unofficial
Elder
Unreal
Scrolls
Engine,
RPG.
the
Yeah.
unofficial Elder Scrolls RPG.
Yes.
Um, my recommendation would be Cyberpunk Red, actually, something we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
I fucking love Cyberpunk Red.
Really.
It doesn't change up the flow of combat too much compared to a fifth edition D&D. It's still you do the thing on your turn. You have a basic reaction you can do outside of your turn. The difference is it gives you so many fucking tools to play the game a trillion different ways. That is a game that between all of the different cyberware you can install and weapons you can have and the different features and stuff you get for your character and how painfully brutal combat is because you can't just long rest, shrug off wounds. If your wounds get decently bad, you have to go to a hospital and pay money like the real world. And just like the real world, it is dreadfully painful. It is horrendous. And it
Yep.
means that doing combat dumb is horrible.
Yep.
And so you're utilizing this incredible toolkit of things at your disposal to play combat in brilliantly interesting ways, and you're always terrified of what's going to happen on a turn outside of yours.
Yep.
I can never recommend Cyberpunk Red enough. It is so much fun.
I'll have to give that another try. I actually played it. I got the test kit when it came out because I was so into Cyberpunk when 2077 was coming out. I'm a huge CD
Mhm.
Projekt Red fan from their The Witcher 3 game ever since. Like, it's my favorite game ever. So I got very into Cyberpunk stuff, and then that was got the kit as soon as it came out. I think I played it once, and the rules seemed like not fleshed out really enough, and maybe that was just because it was the test kit that it did not. Maybe they made improvements.
So I will, as someone who's played a little bit of Cyberpunk Red, I have a campaign ongoing in Red. I will say the game is absurdly dense. It is one of the least beginner friendly games I've ever played. But once you've gotten into the rhythm of it, once you've played the game, played a few sessions, and read through enough of the rulebook to understand how building a character kind of works, it is the fucking coolest. Because you start to really realize how you can build out and spec out your character. In our group, we have someone who is a corpo who is very, very, very addicted to a lot of drugs. And so they started looking into all the different cyberware that helps them with their drug issues, both ones that help give better roles to resist addiction, as well as roles to, cyberware to inject more drugs more often. You can even get an implant that you can load it with, I think, 3 different vials of drugs. And you can choose which one it is. There's a whole slew of drugs in the game. And the cool thing about the cyberware is you set a condition, and whenever that condition is met, it auto feeds the drug into your system. So it can literally be like, okay, when combat starts, this drug is auto injected. Whenever I take a hit, this drug is auto injected. Like,
That's
it just
cool.
runs through them. It's so good. And you can, there's one that disperses any drug you put in it in a mist so that everyone within a certain area is affected by it. And so you can use that to your detriment or benefit. um, and that's just one of many, many, many paths you can run down building a character, going instead with melee, with range, with explosives, with so many things. And it's a fun system, not because of how the mechanics themselves work. They're really punishing, which I think helps the decision making feel more impactful.
Sure.
But it's a cool system because it's literally just like, okay, how do I build a character? And someone hands you a box filled to the brim with random bullshit.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I don't know, grab some shit out of there, make it work.
Yep. And it's like I love stuff. Just to add a little bit onto this, I love stuff like that because it makes it like balance doesn't matter as much when you have so many different options because there aren't going to be like you're still going to have those like the people that are playing for just you're just trying to make it as much maximized as possible, but those people are there's going to be a lot less of them. Like in D&D, that's like the only option to go a lot of times. It feels like there are some creative ones, but you have to be like really creative to be effective and creative.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in games like that, you can do whatever you want. So you can be very, very creative and you don't have to worry about power creep because even if you're not the most powerful, well, you're still doing enough. Like you're doing what you want to do because you have so many options. So
Yep.
they're
And
fun.
there's so many different ways to approach each scenario,
Yeah.
especially with your net runners that can hack into shit. And it's like, yeah, their
Yeah.
combat sucks, but that's because that's not what they do.
Yeah.
And like, it just, Yeah, no matter what way it is, you're just exactly what you're saying. No matter what way you decide to build your character, there's a way you can interact with the world that makes you feel like you're doing something interesting.
Yeah.
It's great. So, as we end the episode for the day, traditionally we like to end with a ridiculously fiery hot take. It can be about anything, but obviously if we can keep it on topic, that's better. Ben, what is your hot take?
Monks are by far the greatest class in D&D 5e.
Okay, the greatest.
The greatest. Yeah,
The
by
great.
far. Yep.
Greatest in fun, greatest in effectiveness, greatest how so?
I do have to say mostly fun, because unfortunately Wizards does not treat us greatly. But
Yeah.
you can make a Shadow Monk be one of the most like useful characters in so many different ways. Having the ability to run at Mach 10 while being able to shadow step and just teleport wherever you can go from a tree to a tree because the sun's out and it's creating a shadow. Like having that ability to just like get from anywhere to anywhere in like no time at all is such a busted ability that I feel like is not talked about enough. So there's a lot of things that you could do with a monk that you can't do with other classes, and the stunning strike is another one of those things, which it's being able to move wherever you want and then be able to stunning strike people. Those two things can make your class be like the ultimate support class. I have shut down so many campaigns, like so many boss battles because of stunning strike. It just like it's to the point where it's not fun almost because you're just like, oh, neat DM, you just created this really cool monster that you wanted to like do all these neat things with it. What if I just stunned it every single turn? Oh, whoops. That has happened to
Oh
me multiple
man.
times with that.
Dude, that's so okay. As weeb trash myself, I do love the Astral Self Monk, because it is just a JoJo character.
Yeah.
So I get it. And I also very much love the monk. I love the concept of a monk. I There's something very, very special to me. And I love this in everything. When you have a fundamental system of the world that is like, hey, guns, or hey, magic, or hey, swords, or hey, whatever. It's like, this is what you do in order to be effective in combat. If you're not doing this shit, you're doing combat wrong and you're going to get your ass kicked. And then someone goes, what if I just kick them like right in the fucking nuts really hard? Like really hard. And it's like, yeah, I suppose that would work. It's like, yeah, and then I'm going to punch him in the mouth.
Yeah.
Like really fucking hard. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
Go for it. I can't stop you.
And then I'm going to do it again.
I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to keep doing it.
It's there's so much fun. And that's like the other part is that I value versatility extremely high in a lot of these things. Whether it's a TTRPG or even like in my Magic decks when I'm placing cards, and if a card does multiple things for me, I love that card because it makes me use like less cards. It's great. So versatility is huge. A monk, you throw a monk. How many different campaigns have you been like thrown in jail in with your group or something? That's like a campaign start or anything. Every other class is just like, well, I can't do anything. I don't have any of my stuff. And I'm just like, all right, neat. I'm just going to shadow step out of the cage. Bye. Like, here we go.
Hey, wizard, where's your spellcasting focus? They took it. Well, can you use this as one? I mean, I guess I could. Where's your spell book? They took that too.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're a commoner now. You're playing a commoner.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just the thing. Versatility is great, and having a monk be able to pretty much always access their abilities is so nice.
Phenomenal. So good. So good. It's a special class when they're just as effective as everyone else, and the most advanced piece of technology they wield is a stick.
Yeah. Yep.
So there we go. Best class in the game is the monk. All right. I think that is where we will call it for the day. Right. Thank you, Ben, for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening / watching. If you are on YouTube, please feel free to do the YouTube pleasantries of likes, comments, subscribes, things like that. Watch the Halloween episode as well as season 2 of The Usual NPCs to see more of us and Ben especially. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.